All right, looks like we're live. Welcome everybody to episode 3 of our Catamount Trail Chatter series. Tonight we're going to be sitting down with Milan Kubala of Stowe, Vermont. Milan is an advocate for the sport of skimo, and we first connected with Milan back in 2016 when you came out to our weekly skimo series, which at the time it's not really skimo, it's more of like a beer league uphill series. But during that series, you earned a unique nickname, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So why don't we jump in? Welcome, Milan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's been quite a ride learning about skimo and becoming a skimo fanatic, and I love to share some of my knowledge and some of my passion. And some of the stories that go way back when we first met at the races that you're referring to. And thank the Catamount Trail Association and thank my host here, Mountain Road Outfitters, to hosting us in this beautiful studio here. So let's get going.
All right. So how did you grow up in Vermont? And if not, how did you get to Vermont? What brought you to Vermont?
So you'll probably notice that as I speak tonight, and let me know if I veer off to a different language when I start talking Czech or German or something like that. I am actually originally from the Czech Republic. I've come to the United States in the early 90s, and tennis was really what brought me over. I was one of the first athletes that from the Eastern Europe bloc coming over on a scholarship. So I went over to Michigan and played tennis in the area for university, got my degree, and got into a tennis business. And met my wife through a couple of friends. There's a funny story there too, that maybe we'll get to a little later. And then she told me that she does not want to stay in the Midwest, that she wants to go somewhere more exciting. So we started traveling a little bit, and she had a friend in Boston. We came through Stowe, and we both just fell in love with the area. Went for a hike. At that point, I didn't know what hiking was. The word hike to me was like going for a walk, but hiking, Midwest, there's not a whole lot of big hills. We got to be hiking. It was actually a strenuous exercise. So we came here and just fell in love with it and tried to figure out how to make it work here. And 4 years later, we were here, and we've been here since 2004, really 16, 17 years.
Nice. That's awesome. So you're currently living in Stowe, and what are you doing for gainful employment right now out of Stowe?
I've got one thing that, my life changed about 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when we had our kids. I was playing around a lot in the snow every morning, skinning up the mountain. And then things changed a little bit 10 years ago when we had our first child. So right now I am actually a stay-at-home dad, and I am helping a couple of different outlets in the area to do some ski guiding and starting a skimo uphill program at Bolton with the collaboration of Bolton Valley Resort, as well as Sunrise Mountain Guides. Pretty exciting time, given the boom of uphill skiing and the opportunities we have. In the last 5 or 6 years, the community and the people I've met, it's really driving me to pursue that passion that I have for the endurance sports and being outside and skiing as well.
Yeah, great. That sounds awesome. And so you have a unique relationship with the Catamount Trail itself, right? I like in your previous job, I heard that you used to use it to commute. And
yeah, I always was fascinated by this mythical trail called Catamount, and I didn't even know how to pronounce it back then. This is, again, going back 16 years. And the area that I discovered the trail was in a Nebraska notch, in the Nebraska Valley, right by the Trout Club, the section between Traps and Bolton. And later on, I learned it's one of the most beautiful spots on a Catamount, and I might be biased because that's where I kind of learned to backcountry ski and first started going up. That was my first encounter with the Catamount Trail. I remember going up to Bolton one year, and it was a fascinating trip. And then, Catamount Trail kind of weaves around different places in Stowe. And at one point, I ended up living over on the other side in the Beaver Meadow, Sterling Valley area. And I found that there is Catamount through there too. So one day I decided that I'll follow it and see where it takes me. And lo and behold, I ended up on top of Robinson Springs, and that was just directly downhill to my job that I was working at that time. So it was a great commute. Once I figured that, didn't matter if it was a winter, it was a summer, I'd run or I would ski. The only bad part was that I was living at about 1,600 feet, and I had to go to about 2,000 feet, go through a little keyhole to drop down to 700 feet down by the river. So it was okay on the way to work, but on the way from work, it was a little bit more work. But it was the end of the day, and I loved it. And I always, when I lived in the village, I commuted using the rec path, and I always try to take advantage of the recreational opportunities we have here in the area, and there's plenty of them. So I started running to work using the rec path, and when we moved from the village to a different location, I just was racking my brain to figure out how I'm going to do that. And then I was lucky enough to live there. So my latest, endeavor, and this has just happened in the last month or so, I'm going back to Nebraska, helping out at Bolton Valley. I think that's a pretty short trip going there. Now that I know skimo and I know the advantage of the skimo, back then I did it on a leather boot and a 3-pin binding, but I bet you it would be a pretty awesome commute, and it would probably not take, it would take longer than a car, obviously, but it would be a bad trip going up there, especially coming back. It would be the opposite, right? If I'd be coming from work, as soon as you climb up to the highest point, then it's just downhill all the way to Nebraska. Yeah. So that's my latest adventure on how I can commute to work.
So the next challenge is a Section 22 commute.
Yep, no. Section 22. That will be the brand name, Section 22 commute.
That's awesome.
Going to Nebraska to Bolton.
Well, and I love how you continue to keep incorporating the CT into the Catamount Trail into your commute. How, like that first time when you were coming from Beaver Meadows, the Sterling Valley area, how far were you commuting every day? Or like, so what is that trip distance to and from work?
Oh, it was I was kind of skipping the area of Wisner Woods. I would dump on Edson Hill Road, and then I would just follow Edson Hill Road. So it was about 4.5 miles one way.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
No, it wasn't at all. I mean, it was actually even less than when I was running a rec path, because that was about 5.5. Now the commute now to Bolton Valley from Nebraska, it'll be a little bit of a different endeavor. I'm not sure if I can do that every day. Thankfully, I don't necessarily work every day guiding there or teaching uphill, but that would be a pretty cool thing to write about. There was an article at one point about the man that runs to work. That was like 2007. And when I think of it now, how much movement there is in the early morning exercise, just seeing what's happening at the mountain, it's pretty inspiring to see that people are getting into that.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you've been skiing for a while. Were you introduced to skiing at a young age, or how did you get into skiing, just generally? So
my dad was a avid skier, and he was a self-taught. My mom loved skiing, and they met through skiing. So as a kid, I was sliding off of a ditch. That was my first ski hill. It was a little ditch. I was about 2 years old. I still remember, like, I'd be standing out of my body watching myself slide that little ditch. So I was doing skiing before I was doing anything else. And then our family vacation, whether it was with family or my grandparents, we'd be going out to Black Forest, and it was a little area in the Black Forest where there was this little hill. And I remember to this day, I had a discussion with my mom the other day. I remember all these things now that I get older. They're all coming back. My dad riding one of those where you hook the thing on the rope tow. Actually, it's a metal hook, and then you have a hockey stick with a rope in it, and he put it between his legs, and I'd be between his legs going up. And so that was my first encounter in skiing, and he was really young at that age, and that's really where I started skiing. And then I took on hockey and tennis, and one of those three, one of them had to be kind of the main. So I decided to play tennis, and I was glad what tennis brought me. But I always thought, when I'm done with tennis, I really want to get into the sports that I've missed and that I had a passion for, and I did as a child. And that's what brought me back to skiing, and really that's what got me to come to Stowe, because this is the ski mecca, whether it's on the hill or off the hill or cross country. And yeah.
For sure. So as then backcountry skiing, like at what point in time did you was your first backcountry ski experience? Was that also at a really young age, or was that kind of later in life?
No, that goes back to that little story about the hiking, right? I didn't know what the hiking was till I got to Stowe, because the word hiking just didn't signify exercise that was significant. It just felt like I was walking. But then when I really saw hiking, I felt that was. So same thing with backcountry skiing. I really didn't know what backcountry skiing was. I thought backcountry touring, just going from point A to point B, was backcountry skiing, and I didn't really understand the difference between that. So when I first started backcountry skiing, is I strapped a pair of snowshoes on my feet, and I carry my skis and boots, and I was a telemarker back then, and I still am at times when I'm not doing skimo. And I remember those heavy T1s, the Bumblebee boots, and I don't know what ski that was that I had, and really heavy binding on the backpack and snowshoes. And by the time I got to the top, I looked like I just took a shower, and then I had to change all that stuff. I didn't know there was skins back then. I didn't know. So it was in the Pinnacle Meadow area up in Stowe. That was my first introduction to backcountry skiing, climbing on snowshoes. Didn't know what skins were and carrying. And then I figured, okay, well, I'll just wear the boots and put the snowshoes on. Still didn't know about skins. And when I got my first pair of skins, they were too long, so I cut them, but I cut them too short. So then I sewed them together. But I sewed them the other way. I didn't know they went one way. They were directional. So I sewed them the other way, and I get to the hill, and I put those things on, and they didn't work because they were the opposite. I had the toe in the heel reversed. And I was like, this is not, I'm going back to my snowshoes. So then I, kept talking to friends. And so that really was in the area 16 years ago when I first moved here. And then I just fell in love with it. And I was just going up the mountain. Didn't matter what the temperature was and what the hours were. I just would climb on the mountain, if it was early in the morning, or discovered Nebraska Valley, where I really started skiing off the Catamount Trail Club, where now we see probably the most traffic of backcountry touring or skiing on any given day. But that was my introduction. Again, this Catamount Trail was part of it. My first dips at backcountry skiing. Awesome.
So, and back then, for a long time, it sounds like you were a telemark skier.
Yes.
At what point did you convert, or did you pick up alpine touring?
It was at the point that it became apparent that if I show up and in other races with my telemark gear, I may not be as successful.
So up until the skimo, up until you got involved in skimo, you were purely a telemark skier.
Yeah.
And then as you got involved with the sport of skimo, you got into alpine.
I converted to AT. I really didn't know, 6-7 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot on the market when it comes to AT, and really it was expensive and it was really hard to get, and we weren't really trusting those pins, and it was not appealing to me, and the telly was just, I even got so minimalist that I was using the Volley Mountaineer toe piece with the 3 pins actually sticking out, and that was it. And then I was using a leather boot. I had a double leather boot made by Italian company. It escapes me the name, but then I had the Alpina Alaska on, and that's what I enjoy on the most. But when it came to get into some competitions with others that had the proper gear, there was no going back.
For sure. So what is it about backcountry skiing in Vermont that is so special? I feel like through skimo you've gotten to ski in a variety of other places. Do you still think Vermont is kind of offers a special experience?
Absolutely. Just in the last few days, I won't say where I went, but I mean the places. I was back in Nebraska too, and it's been a while since I've been back there, and it's magical. I mean, one, it's safe. You really don't need to go with a whole lot of people, or you're always within a half hour of somebody or something. What fascinates me about skiing and backcountry in Vermont is that every time in the woods, you look at the trees and they're still not that big. And you think that, a lot of these hills were log, and they were open pastures, 100 years ago. And and you get to places where you thought you were, but all of a sudden there's like this old road that's obvious in the winter. In the summer, you wouldn't even know it's there, but in the winter, everything just sort of opens up and shows. And I think that's what makes it special. And you find these little nooks and crannies where, you know, your turns are not that long. You're not skiing for that long, but you can go a couple of different places and be out there 4 hours on end and be comfortable, safe, and feel confident like you can do it. You know, I've had many friends that would venture off to the bigger mountains, and they would come back and say the same thing. It was really hard to find somebody to go skiing with us, and we had to watch the weather and the avalanche danger and all that. We don't have any of that in Vermont, even though I was caught in a little tiny slide one year. Oh shoot, I shouldn't be saying that. Up on Mansfield, I did something really not smart. But you know, outside of that, there's really been hardly anything anywhere. And just the history, I think it's what really draws me into the woods. Being out there, like just the other day in Nebraska, there was a couple of old logging woods that I don't remember them being there, and I was probably not going to the same area before. So you always discover something new, something different, and I think that's what draws a lot of people out there too.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to point out that there are a few places in Vermont that can slide. And like one of the dangers of backcountry skiing in Vermont regularly is that we don't think about those things all the time. And so sometimes we can find ourselves in places where we're not prepared because maybe we weren't expecting to end up in one of these drainages. But yeah, I would agree with you that it's great. You can go wherever you want, more or less, and the level of safety is so much higher, so that and there's just so many nooks and crannies. That's the thing. This place has been skied for so long, and like people have lived here for so long. You just never know what you're going to find, and that like sense of exploration is, and like you never know what you're going to discover. Is kind of fun. So you've mentioned skimo a few times now, and some people might not know what skimo is. Do you want to take a minute and tell us a little bit about like
Sure.
what is skimo, and how does it relate to kind of the backcountry skiing world?
So skimo, really short for ski mountaineering, is a competitive version of ski mountaineering, and ski mountaineering in itself is really skiing backcountry. Like using, I guess the difference between backcountry skiing and ski mountaineering is skiing in the backcountry, but using more than just the skis and the skins and the proper bindings and the boots. There's more equipment. It's more evolving, and it's going to places that if you didn't have some of the technical skill or technical equipment, you really couldn't get in those places. So where skimo, or in Europe, it's been called randonnée racing for many, many years, is a competitive, controlled version of ski mountaineering. So there's a couple of different disciplines that are defined within the sport of ski mountaineering, the competitive side of it. There's a discipline called the individual, where it's a race and you go up and down multiple times. You may traverse, and you may get into some technical sections where you have to use a harness and via ferrata, possibly crank bonds if you're going off a ridge. You may be roped in with somebody, or you may be skiing down with somebody roped in, depending if it's a team competition or individual competition. But it's all done within a controlled environment. So when it comes to a race like that, where there's a lot more equipment involved, there is a jury and a lot of volunteers that make sure that the race is safe. Which for true ski mountaineering, you know, the individuals that are doing the ski mountaineering will decide where to go and make sure that they're safe. So it's done for them, and it's done in a different speed. Then there's couple of different ones, couple of the other disciplines like vertical, which is just you go up once and the fastest one to the top. And then there's a couple of other ones, teams. You can do a team race where you go with your teammate, and you kind of have to stay within a certain distance, and you travel from point A to point B with different obstacles in the middle. But really, what separates the skimo racing and ski mountaineering is the equipment itself that you're using. It's designed specifically to be used for efficiency and speed. And I have a couple of examples here, and I don't want to make this into a technical talk, but the number one is the boot. You know, when I show people my my race boot, they think of it as a cross-country ski boot, because it really, I mean, it's super light. It's about 600 grams, weighs next to nothing. It's lighter than any of the hiking boots I have or trail running shoes. And really, there's a cuff to it, and there is top to it, and there's a bottom to it. So this becomes basically a running shoe that has just a little tire here that goes across, and then there's a cuff to it that you use to lock in, and it's a one lever that locks in the whole boot. There's a bunch of straps here. There's kind of, if you guys can see, some of the rope that goes around that literally snaps you in, and now you're in. This is all carbon, so it's pretty stiff, and that's what you're skiing down on. So it skis like a regular boot. This one is actually particularly stiff because it's all made out of carbon. But for the uphill, you know, the movement that in the upper cuff you get, you're not dealing with any levers. You're not dealing with anything else on your bindings. The boot is super important. The bindings also, and I have an example of it here. You know, ski, you can't really tell what ski is. I could be showing you any kind of ski, but when you look at the binding, it has a tech toe that really doesn't have a whole lot to it. And it's very similar to what we use. It only has one set of springs on one side because it's all about the weight at this point. And then in a heel piece, it has just the two pins and lever here. So it's super minimalist. It's designed for speed. It has safety feature. It will release sideways. If I yank down as hard, it kind of moved sideways. You can see how the pins move. It will release up depending how thick these wires are. So they're designed for a certain weight or range of weight. The toe will release as well. But the problem with these skis is that you don't want to release because they don't have any leashes nor brakes. So if you release, you're done racing. You get a DNF, did not finish, and that happens at times. It doesn't happen very often at all. And actually, there's a discussion about bringing the brakes to skimo racing. But you know, the ski is super lightweight, 65 underfoot, 161 centimeters, but it's pretty stiff. It skis well for a ski as light as it is. So if I had to say, you know, what defines skimo racing or differentiation, it's really the equipment, and it's the use and the minimalist approach to the equipment, and the boot and the bindings combined with the ski. I think it's definitely something that's a must.
So your first introduction to skimo racing was the Tuesday night series in 2016 at Bolton Valley. And at that time you were showing up on your 3-pin setup and kicking everybody's butt.
The same 3-pin setup that is sitting right behind you. I didn't bring mine, but you have it right behind you. Nice.
So what was it? I mean, you quickly became engaged. Like since 2016, you've quickly gotten into skimo. I mean, you've raced in Europe. You sit on the board of the US Ski Mountaineering Association. So what was it about skimo that really kind of drew you in? And like, what made you get so engaged and involved with it, or want to be so involved in it?
Mm-hmm. Well, skimo as a sport, you know, it's a really unique sport in itself. And I've done quite a few endurance sports, but this one is a combination of, you know, the skill of downhill skiing, the skill of the cross country and the uphill, and then also the technical pieces of the transitions and other ways of travel when the skis are actually not necessarily on your feet. So, you know, there's the race tactics and there's some of the technical pieces of the racing. So it's a well-rounded combination. You don't have to be the fastest on the uphill. And you don't have to be the fastest on the downhill. So you can still excel with a skill set that's kind of a combination of all those. So I thought that was neat because it wasn't like, okay, well, I can't do it because I'm not strong in this and that's it. It wasn't just one-sided piece of it. So that was one. Two, it's incredible demanding. And I guess I love that part of it, that I really feel like I'm doing something when I'm doing this sport. And I train and I try to replicate a race, but that's like impossible to do because once you get out there and you start doing it, it's unbelievable. Also, the group of people that are involved in this, because they all love backcountry skiing, but they're kind of like me. They like to go up a couple of times. They don't want to just do it once or twice, and that kind of drew me with into that atmosphere of those people. and the sport itself is fairly young in America. And I feel like there's so much potential when it comes to the different geographical locations and all the athletes that we're still missing in this sport. The sport is just became recognized in the Youth Olympics in Switzerland in 2020. So the youth had their first Olympic show. And we are working as an organization hard on making skimo an Olympic sport in the 2026 Olympics in Cortina in Italy. So twofold, I love the sport itself and what it does and how hard it is and all it combines. I love the people in it. And I also, the sport itself has a potential and it's new, and I feel like I can make an impact to take the sport to the level in the United States where it really deserves to be for what it is and how much I love it. And a group of people that I'm connected loves it. And I think that we have so many great talented athletes that may not even know about skimo, and once they discover it, they would be like me, just absolutely obsessed with it. Only if they knew that it is really not, you don't have to be a great downhill skier. You want to be good downhill skier, but there's so much more to it. Or you don't have to be fast uphill. You don't have to be fast. Your transition's the fastest. It's a combination of all.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, I definitely think it's like such a unique sport because it opens the door. You're seeing a lot of like trail runners get into skimo racing because they have the engine, and then they have to develop, the technical skills. One of the, I feel like Ian Clark is somebody we both are acquainted with. He participated as a junior at the World Championships a few years ago for the US. And I feel like he's a unique situation too. Like he got to go, he's like background's alpine racing, but he's also has a background in bike racing, and that like that combination of technical skill and engine, like really power, like good cardiovascular ability kind of like worked well for the sport. And like you're saying, it's such a young sport. There's a lot of opportunity in it for, people to kind of like get involved and have, maybe have a career or something in it. So it's
yeah, absolutely. And I think the organization too, it's, it's so young, and it just recently became a national governing body recognized. It grew from basically ski mountaineering 10 years ago was run by the Alpine Club and the American Alpine Club. It was part of it back then. And then kind of a couple of enthusiasts out in Colorado said, okay, we're gonna make this sport official. We're gonna create an association, write the bylaws and all that. And that happened just recently, a couple of years back. And we started back then when I first joined. I mean, we had a handful of volunteers, and there's up to 40 volunteers right now. The latest project we were working on as a team, we were designing a high performance group, which is basically a group open to any member of the association. And it was all about sharing, all about, because this year is kind of a weird year. There's no national team. We couldn't hold a national qualifiers. The Worlds are happening in Europe. The Masters are in France, and the seniors and juniors and youth are in Andorra as of now, but nobody can go. So it was really no point of trying to put something together and also make it fair for a national qualifier in the US. So we decided to take a little broader approach and design a group of people that are like us, just not necessarily the fastest, but they may be fastest to their potential, but they're totally just into the sport and they're super passionate about it and can contribute to others with whether it's being connected or presenting about different topics. So we had our first meeting about a week ago, and it was amazing. I mean, the organization only has about 400 members, and we had 1/4 of those sign up for this program, and they almost all of them showed up for the first meeting, which was amazing because 40 of those are the volunteers that actually run the organization. So that's been exciting to see the response and see the chatter and what the latest talk is about, and they're all interested in racing and how to get faster at their own level, how to become better equipped, and how to manage their nutrition while racing, short, medium, and long races. It's fascinating element of the sport.
That's awesome. So I want to go back a little bit. Back in 2000, when you started coming to our races on Tuesday nights, the first got into skimo, you you picked up a nickname. And do you? I kind of want to understand. Can you tell us or everybody here like what that nickname is and your understanding of how you got that nickname?
Well, it wasn't my choice to to create the nickname. You know, it was probably one of my friends in one of the ski shops that I would come and visit often. Created this nickname of Denim Ghost because I would always, whenever I would be skinning up the mountain early in the morning, or I'd be on the backcountry, or in Nebraska, or I'd be coming up to the Catamount races, I'd be wearing my jeans. They were fleece lined jeans, by the way. I don't think they had flannel at that point. I think it was the better ones. And I just love wearing jeans. They were just the most comfortable, and I just put them on. And then, you know, in my previous job, I never really got to wear jeans. It's hard to wear jeans at work in many probably roles or many jobs. So I thought, what a great opportunity to actually wear jeans. And really, the other reason for that was, and it kind of evolved into this nickname. When I was at the mountain, I was out there early in the morning, or, you know, in the hours, and there was not a whole lot of people there. I love the social aspect of uphill skiing. So I wanted people to know that it was Milan because he was wearing jeans. So I wanted him to actually stop and like say hello and, you know, how you doing, and kind of converse a bit, because like when people are going up and down, like you can't hardly tell who they are, because back then we didn't really wear helmets, but everybody has a hat on and get a helmet and just kind of go by. And then you realize, oh, unless you can recognize their movement, you don't know who they are. So the whole gene thing was part of that, was I wanted to know for people to say hello.
Well, it's funny. My recollection of that first year was like, we would stand around like after the races or before the next, you know, the next race, we'd be like, who was that guy that was on? He was like, he passed me in the dark. Like, what's going on? I think he had jeans on and a 3-pin setup. What's happening? And like, I feel like that first year, a lot of people like noticed you, but like I don't know if you didn't hang around at that. I can't remember.
No.
Didn't hang around at the end of the day. So like it was late at night. So maybe you finished the race and got out of there. And we were like, who? I thought I saw someone in jeans, but he's not here now. Like, I feel like my recollection is that's how you got like the Denim Ghost.
Yeah, I would show up and I would disappear. Well, you know, it was all circumstantial. It wasn't really. It's funny how things like that happen. You know, I really got introduced. It was Tuesday nights, and back then my days off were Tuesday and Wednesday, so I couldn't do anything on the weekends, and anything that was sport related or race related, it was all happening on weekends. This was the first thing I discovered, this citizens thing going on at Bolton, and I could do it. I still remember that. I was like telling my wife, said, Heidi, I'm going to this thing on Tuesday. She's like, okay, go. So I'd literally make it there by 6 o'clock, and then I would just get out and do my thing, and then I had to just scoot home. So I'd be home because at that point, you know, it was kids in the picture. So then I would just have to go home, and I really didn't know anybody and didn't know you guys. And to me, I just really didn't have time to hang around too much. So yeah, it was not my design.
Well, I kind of appreciate how much it's been incorporated into recent endeavors. Like when you started the Mountain Ops Schema team, I feel like everybody adopted jeans as part of your race kit.
Yeah. And, you know, it was at the end of that season. That first race season, we had a little end of the season race at Stowe, and one of the guys there that back then I didn't really know, his name was John Spinney. John approached me. He said, "Hey, you know, let's do something next. You seem like, let's skin together. You seem like you can go up the hill at a good clip, and maybe not just once. So let's start something next year." And then he must have somehow got the sniff of the nickname, or me being in jeans, or maybe he saw me. My first recollection of John Spinney is this guy running up the hill on skis, and I was like, "What is he doing? Is that even possible?" No, here I'm sitting here with all the gear and running up the hills every day more than once. But that was funny, just looking at him running up the hill. But we got together and we thought, okay, let's do something dramatic. Let's do something drastical. Let's do something different. You know, we didn't really want to wear too much spandex, and the jacket that I'm wearing that just to kind of make a point of you know, there's pockets, and there's, again, the equipment is just so important when it comes to the proper racing. But we were okay wearing a top, but we decided to wear jeans, and I actually have those jeans on, the original jeans. So, these are the original Express, $40 from Burlington Mall, and we did a little thing in the back. We put a little Dynafit sign over here, and this was a little logo for Mountain Ops ski shop that still. So when we were getting past, people at least look at us and see where we're from. So the first season we would go to races and race in our jeans. They are short. I usually wear a 32 inseam. These are like a 28. So we wanted to make them go above the boot. But we showed up at a first race it was in Canada, in Mont Tremblant. And we did quite well. It was 3 of us. It was John Spinney, part of the original team, John Wolf, and myself. And we showed up, and we all finished within the first top 5 back then in our categories. And people are coming up to us and like pulling in our jeans, like, what are these? Are these real, or are these fake? And they were really interested in our jeans. And the Dynafit, the Quebec Dynafit rep was up there, and he couldn't believe it. He was like, they didn't tell me they had jeans, because he had the logo in the back. It was just a funny story. And we did end up racing the whole season in those jeans, and it became kind of like, here's these guys showing up in these jeans, because at that point, the places we were going to race, everybody was wearing spandex, like serious spandex and carbon boots. So that was our beginning in that time. And
well, I feel like it didn't hurt that you guys were also performing really well at the same time. I mean, It wasn't just that you guys were in jeans; it was that you guys were in jeans and winning races.
We were doing well, and I still remember that. Actually, you were there with Catamount at that. You had a booth up there. That was their very first time that we met up there, and we just wanted to do something different. We wanted to show people that you don't have to wear spandex or have all these fancy clothes. You can just be in jeans, and you'll still be okay. You'll still do well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. So, can we talk about the mountain? Like, I guess there's quite a bit to unpack here, in the sense that, like, because you started off coming to the Bolton races, you quickly, like, with the next season, you had started the Mountain Ops team and had started getting involved with like the Northeast Rando Race Series. And how did you get? I mean, like, so how that happened pretty quickly. How did you get involved with the United U.S. Ski Mountaineering Association? Like, when did you connect with them, and how did you first get involved with their activities?
So our team started as a team of 3, and our first season, I think, was 2017, and then it quickly evolved. In 18, we grew to 5, and we currently have 10 of us on the team, and we would start traveling outside of the area of the northern Vermont. We got to know through a race at Jay Peak. Jay Peak and Burke had some pretty high-level races, people from Canada and people from down south, from Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and we got to know them. And really, the organizer of the Northeast Rando Series is somebody that's been quite involved in the scene on the East Coast for the last 13 years. His name is Jonathan Schetz, and he got us sort of introduced to another couple of racers, and we knew they were involved in the USSMA, and I kept tabs on what was happening in the association, reading articles and things like that. And at that point, the organization was trying to become the national governing body, and they needed to form different committees and I get the representatives from all over, and that's where I got involved. I actually became quite involved with the Athlete Advisory Committee. I was voted on by the members and the athletes from all over, and to me, that was like the biggest honor. I had no idea. I've been racing for a year, and all these people voted for me, and I actually ended up being a chair, and I'm a chair of that to this day. So I thought, this is neat. I think I can really make some impact, not just on the East Coast, but on the sport itself across the nation, because I was at that time, I was learning that it was a new sport. And that's really how I got into it. I became a chair of the AAC, and then one thing led to another, and now I'm quite involved with the board, and I'm involved with the Sports Performance Committee, and I traveled with the team a couple of years back. Last year, I got to go myself to the Worlds in Innsbruck.
And so yeah, getting involved with the USSMA, that opened the door to racing. And you got to actually participate in racing in Europe, right?
Yeah. Last year, I got to go to the winter World Winter Masters Games out in Innsbruck, which was the first year of the unofficial World Masters Championships. The ISMF, which is the International Ski Mountaineering Association, is trying to grow the participation in the sport, and because this is one of those sports where you can actually be quite good at it at a higher age group, because you only get better as not necessarily faster in the short races, but you become better because there's all these elements of the sport. So they thought to grow the sport, we should get the Masters category involved. And Europe Masters starts at 35 years old, which is really not that old for a sport like this. So that last year they had a first trial of trying to put something together from people from all over the world, and they organized it in Innsbruck. It was part of these Winter Games, and I got to go with the U.S. team, and it was just a phenomenal experience. Seeing the Europeans race. I only had that kind of experience 2 years ago when I went with the U.S. national team to the World Championships in Switzerland. That's where I kind of got a taste what it was like in Europe. And then, last year was my first really big time racing in Europe in Innsbruck. And it was, close to my home. I took the train from my house, about a 4-hour train ride, which is phenomenal. I got on a train in my hometown and met with the team in Innsbruck. They were all coming back actually from Switzerland, from Lausanne, from the Junior Olympics. So that was kind of exciting to hear as well how that went. And then my plan was to go to race in the Pyramenta, which is one of the most prestigious races out in Europe. It's a team's race. It's a stage race. It's kind of like the Tour de France in skimo racing. There's an organization that runs these big time races like the PDG and Pyramenta and Zalama. They're very, very long tradition and history of back then randonnée racing. So that was my plan before things changed. But yes, I was fortunate enough to have those opportunities.
So how would you characterize, or what's different about, how is racing in Europe different than racing in the US? Like, I know you have most of your experiences here on the East Coast, but you have had some experience out West, and then now with your European, like how does like Western skimo racing versus Eastern skimo racing versus Europe? I had
a chance to race out West. I participated with a partner 1 year. 2017 was the year we did the Grand Traverse. That was a phenomenal experience, and I would say that was more like a European race experience. Even though it wasn't much of an up and down, it was more of a point A to point B. It was truly a traverse, because over some 40 miles, we only climb about 9,000 feet, which is very little in quite a few hours. But 2019, I was able to go to the national championships out in Eldora and did the U.S. national championships there. It's more technical when it comes to the East Coast versus West Coast. They have an opportunity, because of the open terrain, to do a little bit more out on places that are not necessarily something that you would ski down on, but you can climb on. So a lot of kick turns and technical skinning, single track, maybe 2 tracks next to each other, not a whole lot of poling, using poles. Here on the East Coast, we have pretty firm conditions. So even if you are in the woods, I mean, it gets to a point where the track is just so well traveled that it becomes more of a highway, and it's still, you can still use your poles. But when it comes to West Coast, there's no poles. And when you go to Europe, it's like you can't really use your poles at all, because it's all in the high terrain. And European racing, the difference there is there's a lot, the vertical, the percentage of the incline is not as high as it is in the US and also especially on the East Coast. So there's a lot of flattish skinning, which the Europeans just have an incredible ability to glide. And they just take off when it gets anything that's under 10%, they're just like going. They're gliding on skins and going so fast. I know when Ian came back in 2017 from Italy, he said that he just couldn't believe they looked like they didn't have any skins on. They were just skiing. They were literally skiing up a hill. because they're used to all of their touring and traversing is, going from ridgeline to ridgeline, going from one fondue place to another fondue place. So when it comes to the racing type there, it's amazing. It's long, and it's not as it's not as steep. It's a lot of traversing, but I mean, there's obviously races where it's quite technical and like that. But I think that would be probably the biggest difference. They're just so much better and gliding because they have the opportunity to go. And there's times where in Europe, you actually are going down a hill with your skins on a track, because you're trying to get to some point, and the downhill may be quite long, where you actually will lock your boots, and you'll be skiing, but you never really lock your bindings and never take your skins on, because at the bottom you're going to go back up again. Here, that would be considered a transition point, and you would actually ski down and then go put your skins back on and go up. So those are probably the biggest differentiations from my experience that I have seen.
So what about the crowds? How do the crowds in Europe compare, the spectator crowds compared to like the Northeast Rando race series?
Well, that's a different story.
I know, yeah, totally.
But that's the thing. People are so accustomed seeing people on skis going from point A to point B, and also their geographical area, where they live and where their little chalets are and all that. They'll come on for these races. It's amazing. They'll line the skin track into certain sections where they know it's going to be interesting, whether it's the bottom of a downhill, or they love to watch the transitions as people are coming in as fast as they can, and they're trying to get from one set of skills going downhill to another set of skills going uphill. They love their bells. I remember a team carrying those things are so heavy. But they also love to move around on skis. So they'll make it a point where they'll go for their own little tour, and they know there's a race going on, and they'll make a point of stopping somewhere along the way and cheer you on. And the races don't last at times all day. So they'll just be there for a little bit, but they're so accustomed to it. It's amazing the atmosphere that they can create out there. It's way different than here. That's why I feel like we have the opportunity to grow that sport here, because it is an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, and so Jonathan's been putting on this Northeast Rando race series for quite a while now. And do you wish you had access to bigger terrain, or do you enjoy going to the Northeast? What about the Northeast series is like unique and makes it a worthwhile to get involved?
So what's neat about the East Coast series, and this could be Jonathan or anybody else's race on the East Coast, it's really unique to where it could be the same resort, same place, same location, but a different terrain, different track, different makeup of the routes. Jonathan has a ton of experience of racing on the West Coast and the East Coast, and he really does a good job designing his routes. And he likes to challenge people. He likes to really make the downhill challenging, and he likes to do 20 some transitions in a race, which is a lot. He likes to really make it up, and some of the races that I've been out skiing out west, his races are actually more challenging, more technical. We don't have the terrain to work with, but he does a really good job here, and we just don't have the weather, we don't have the predictability in that. So we'll be waiting until Thursday to see what it's really going to be like, because it could change from Thursday to a Friday. And I know that the weather is unpredictable anywhere, but I think that our place is just so much smaller. We can't just move it to a different location where the snow is a little different. Yeah. The aspect is the aspect, and when it gets hit.
So you would say that, like the Northeast Rando series, you get your value, they're full value races for sure.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd encourage anybody out there that's watching to like Google Northeast Rando race series, any Rando race series, because Jonathan does put on a number of events, and they're all pretty unique and really, really great. So
very, very creative too. And the places that he puts on his races, they don't have big vert. They don't have big elevation gain. Like Stowe has 2,000. So he works with places that may only have 1,000 or 1,200 or maybe 1,300 because it's all southern Vermont or it's northern Massachusetts, the Berkshires. So he's very creative with that, and you really don't need a whole lot of vert to put on a good race. You just have to be creative where you put your roots and really know the terrain.
Well, and sometimes I think like those shorter races with the additional transitions kind of like make strategy. They put a higher emphasis on strategy and
Absolutely.
and some of those like, you know, those certain skills like, you know, transitioning your uphill, your mode transfers and transitions are that much more important, you know, because if you're going to have 20 transitions and it takes you if you can shave a minute off your transition, that's 20 minutes. That's huge.
Yes. So yeah, think of that in the terms of time. I mean, it's crazy. That's why I love the aspect of the sport as well. Is you can really get so technical about these pieces, 20 transitions, and the difference could be at 10 seconds. You know, 10 seconds times 20 transitions. That's a lot of time. That could be a difference between you and ending up in the top 3 versus you ending up in the next group, because it seems like the results are always these clusters of 2-minute times. And same thing with the downhill. I mean, you can have a downhill that's 30 seconds faster than somebody else because the downhills are, you know, 3.5, 4.5 minutes. But if you can run it 20 seconds faster, and there is 3 or 4 of them, I mean, that's a lot of time. I didn't know all this before, but I love that part of it, that you can really manage it that way too.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the sport, like the competitive side of skimo or ski mountaineering on the East Coast is unique, and like there is a pretty great community. It's pretty small still right now, but it's great to see it kind of growing and getting engaged, and like it's nice to see more and more mountains kind of open to kind of working with the community to kind of like facilitate some of these events and activities. So along those lines, what have you been doing lately? Earlier you mentioned that you were getting involved with Sunrise Mountain Guides and Bolton Valley, and starting kind of an uphill or skimo programs with those guys. And like, what does that kind of look like, and what are you hoping to accomplish there?
So yes, I you know, when the fall was coming, I was approached by a couple of my friends, not from the area, to help them to introduce their friends, other friends and athletes. It was a triathlete team of triathletes. They were looking for an alternative to cross train. So I did a little virtual clinic for them. And what was supposed to be an hour virtual clinic ended up being, and it was planned for 8 o'clock on Thursday. So imagine that ended up being a 2.5 hour session. And I couldn't get the people off the phone or off Zoom back then. We still had at like 10:30, there was still people on. They were probably yawning at that point, but it was incredible response to just some of the everyday things that I was talking about. The excitement was just crazy. And then I did some follow-ups with some of the people, and they said, you know, nobody's really teaching that. Nobody's really telling people how to do it. Nobody's really using those special skills that you had shared with us with anybody. Nobody really knows where to get that stuff. When you Google, there's not a whole lot of stuff that will come even on YouTube. That's in English. There's stuff that will come out in different languages. And there's really no opportunities to sign up for any classes or clinics like that anywhere. You should really do something like that. And it kind of just one thing led to another. And I thought, you know, there is an art to uphill skiing. And I really didn't want to just go after the spandex and, you know, tell everybody it's okay to wear jeans. I wanted to more like use the skill set that I have gained through the last 6 years of learning myself, the efficiencies and the technicality of the sport. And I want to share that with the broader audience of people that are interested to go uphill and be efficient and learn how to do it without being in pain when they get to the top, and not freeze when they're trying to get into their things and switch from one to the other and to go down. And maybe when they get down, they maybe have an appetite to go up one more time. So I connected with the leadership, and Adam Deloria over at Bolton was open to it. And we thought, you know, what a great way to get people introduced to the sport. They run a great backcountry program, and so does Sunrise. But I thought of this as doing this in a controlled environment, doing it up on the hill. You know, you're always 10 minutes from help if you needed help. And it's really easy to learn to skin when you're in an environment like that. And even people that know how to skin, you know, there's an art to poling, and there's an art how you navigate the terrain and how to use your equipment to its full potential. And I've been having so much fun. It's incredible. I can't believe I actually get to ski for a living now, even though it's not much of a living yet, but hopefully it will evolve into something. I can't wait to get juniors started, I had all of my kids skinning. And you know, when you just show people how to pull the proper way, so their hands are not cramping when they get to the top, or how to even just like, people have never even seen skins, and they, at the end of the session, they can take the skins off without taking their skis off and not fall over. It's fascinating what the grin that I get on their faces, and people that never thought would like it, because it just looks so hard and strenuous, and it just, people, you know, when they see others doing it, they're like exhausted and in pain, and that's not something that they're interested in. But then they try, they're like, oh, this is actually not that bad. This actually is fun. I can do this. And also, you don't need a whole lot of time to do it. You know, you can do a quick session of uphill skiing if you're doing it proper way, and you can get a phenomenal workout with not a whole lot of time commitment. So I thought all those elements, and there's a lot of people, especially this year, that want to try it, but they're intimidated. They're intimidated by the equipment. They're intimidated by their friends to be left behind. They're intimidated even just how to put their boots into the toe, right? I mean, that's like the most frustrating part. It was for me when I first started doing it. It was ridiculous. I was trying to get in and we just wouldn't go in. So you just showed them, you know, little tricks here and there, and you can see the light goes on. It's like, wow, this has potential. I can actually, like, I can ski a little bit more over here, a little bit more over here when I become more confident. So it's all just kind of combining that skill set that I've got and I was shared at one point, and offering it to people.
So who are the people that you're targeting? I mean, and would you make a distinction between skimo and uphilling? Like, are those two separate things? You know, skimo being competitive, and
so skimo and uphilling, there's a lot of crossover, right? Sure. So you start with uphilling, and you can use skimo elements in it. Once you get to the equipment piece of it, where skimo really distinguishes itself is the equipment, because it's more efficient, it's faster, there's less of it. You can get into the uphill, then you get into the fitness piece of it, and then you can transition into competitive piece. But I feel like there's just so much crossover here. People get into the fitness, and they may be interested doing the uphill skiing because of fitness. They are not quite interested in the racing yet. Maybe some youth programs later on and things like that of some cross-country skiers and alpine skiers. But there's just so much crossover that can happen. The people that I have introduced uphill skiing were just people that were looking for, like, I had a client that just was getting too cold riding the lifts and never really always heard about the uphilling and never really got into it, and just loves to trail run, loves to a bike, and in the winter loves to ski with the kids, but just gets too cold. So at that point, you know, we went out and tried this, and a lot of the elements I had to kind of adjust my equipment at that point because they weren't necessarily on the ultralight stuff. But there's still a lot of things that cross over that you can really benefit from.
So it sounds like with these endeavors at Bolton and with Sunrise Mountain Guides, you're kind of focusing on, you know, maybe backcountry skiers that want to be more efficient so that they can have more energy or more gas in the tank when it comes time to go downhill, or so they can do, you know, get an extra laps or extra vertical. They can spend more time out there and have more fun. But you're also looking at people that are maybe not necessarily interested in backcountry skiing, but are looking for a way to somewhat sort of fitness oriented activity to do that might not be running or biking or something like that, but they're not necessarily, you know, they're skiers, but they're looking to like improve their fitness or maintain their fitness.
Yeah. And you know, also people that necessarily don't care about the skiing down, like they're not really that good of a skier. Maybe they can get down. That's great. But it's not about, it's not about that. Them skiing down. It's, you know, when you talk about backcountry skiing and they like the downhill piece of it too, and they appreciate it. But you know, this group over here is more about the uphill. You know, it's like they'll drive a half hour to skin for an hour to ski 5 minutes to drive back for a half hour. You know, that 5 minutes, that's insignificant to them. And they really don't care about the 5 minutes. They want to just get that over and get down and be safe. And you know, my very first sessions I had, it was a triathlete. And he's like, I'm okay downhill. I hope I don't get hurt. But I want to do this as a cross training. So, I mean, he was as sweaty on the down as he was on the up. But, you know, he didn't have to be a great skier because we were all in a controlled environment. If I sent him in the woods, that would have been a different story. But to be on the resort, and Bolton's great because they have a daytime up the route, and one of them is a little steeper than the other, and you can bail out any time, and you can just do partial laps or full laps. And that's kind of where the idea came from, was focusing more on the people that may not be as good of a downhill skier, but really want to take advantage of this kind of exercise, because if they go downhill skiing, they're just not good enough. They get cold, or they just don't enjoy it as much.
Nice. So along these lines, like, so what does the future hold for Milan? Like, what are you hoping? It sounds like you're a stay-at-home dad, and you're kind of building these kind of like programs at Bolton and Sunrise Mountain Guide. So what do you hope to be in 2 years? Where do you hope to be? What do you hope to be happening for you?
I think there's just tremendous potential for skimo, especially on the East Coast, given the population we have. You know, we have so many athletes here, and to have a junior program and have a follow-up program, and maybe eventually grow that into a year-round program, because a lot of your training happens in the summer and dryland training. It would be my dream to have a program that runs year-round, and there's a feeder program, and it's really just introducing people to that lifestyle that skimo and backcountry skiing has brought to me. And it could be something that starts as an uphill program, and kids nowadays, they tend to like to jump off of things and go straight down. It would be awesome to introduce them to this kind of travel on skis with earning their turns, and then some of them would maybe venture off over here on this side. So juniors for sure, but also the general public. We already see what's happening when people show up at the hill in masses nowadays, but getting even more people to it and enjoying it at a level where they feel like, wow, I'm actually getting better at this. When they go up in the first of the season and they go up at the end of the season, seeing the difference, or being on, it's not easy skinning on soft snow that we had recently, and to learn on how to balance yourself and how to engage your skins and boots and the bindings when you're climbing, and some of that soft sugary stuff, you really learn it. You're like, wow, I really don't need to use the pulse. That, to me, those lights and those grins that people that come back on their faces, it's phenomenal. And Bolton and the Stowe area range camp is such a magical places, and taking them out there and connecting them with the history and the mythical places, that's a huge part of it. So I'd love to have a program that's kind of a feeder to all these adventures, and just helping people to enjoy the outdoors in a safe, confident, and efficient way.
Awesome. Well, we wish you luck with that. So if somebody wanted to connect with you, either to hire you for a session, or get engaged, or for any reason to kind of learn more or start a program, how would they get in touch with you?
I think the best way to get in touch with me personally would be through Sunrise Mountain Guides or Bolton Valley.
Okay.
I have a program that I have set up in collaboration with them, and any of the requests that go, they go directly to me. There's a page on Sunrise Mountain Guides on their website, and there's also a page part of the backcountry programming at Bolton.
So both Bolton and Sunrise have information online. Yep. Related to? Great.
Yep. And also, if there's, the USSMA is still part of, even though that's not really a job, and that's not really kind of a thing that you would do as looking for the future, but that's definitely a big part of it too. So if anybody wants to get involved, they don't have to be a racer to get involved with the USSMA. They may have an experience in marketing or fundraising, or any kind of expertise that we could use. Somebody that's passionate in uphill skiing or backcountry skiing, definitely the more talent we have, that's definitely an organization. If we can get the sport to 2026 Olympics, that would be a success right there. And then from there, the whole sport blows up, because the fundraising changes at that point, and the funds come, and then you can do more things and really grow it from there. So that would be, beside my personal piece of it, corporate sure. Part of it, that would be definitely it too.
For sure. Well, I'll make sure to add links to the Sunrise Mountain Guide page, Bolton Valley, and to the USSMA in the description of this video on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, once it goes live. And I don't know, do you have anything else you want to say? I think we're kind of running up on our time here.
Yes. Thank you, Greg, for having me. And, I want to thank Cade from the Mountain Road Outfitters, who provided this beautiful studio for me, and she helps the team with gear every year with our race suits and jackets and shorts. And Dina Fit helps us with the technical gear of it. And Camp, another great company to look at some of the lightweight, very efficient backpacks and helmets and skins. They do a really good job there, and they have really helped us to get some of this very specific gear. So thank you to our partners as well.
Well, I want to thank you too, just because, I mean, we're not running our Tuesday night series this year, but it's been great to see you guys when, like, as you organized the Mountain Ops team and like brought those people in, that created like this really great energy at the event. And like, you know, it's one of those events where you don't have to show up in spandex. Some people do, some people don't. And it's just a really good, it's a really fun time. And we really enjoy putting on that series, and it's great. And I feel like you've been responsible for bringing a lot of people to that. And, you know, I appreciate the effort that you're putting in and how you've been engaged with the community and everything, all the energy and time and effort you've kind of brought to the sport. It's been, I definitely think you're one of the more influential people in that community in the Northeast. And I just appreciate all the effort, everything that you do for the sport.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to not to forget one person, really group of people. That's my family and my wife Heidi, who supported me through this. It is not easy when I get up at 3:30 in the morning and she looks at the clock and says, "Are you serious?" There's times where the clock says 2:45 when I have to go get my training done. So to be home by 5:30, 6 o'clock to get the kids ready for school. So she definitely deserves the big thanks. And I know it's annoying at times, many times, Heidi, if you're watching this, but I really appreciate it because it gives me an opportunity to pursue a passion and to make a difference to other people's lives in a way that this sport has made a difference in my life.
Well, yeah, congratulations and thank you. Yeah, well, I think that's it, guys. So this concludes episode 3 of Catamount Trail Chatter. Definitely check back. We're going to be sitting down with the Vermont Huts Association next week for episode 4 to learn more about them. And again, I'll share some additional information about Milan and how you can get in touch with him if you want to learn more about uphilling and skimo or the US Ski Mountaineering Association in the description below. And have a good night, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
All right, we are done.